2017. Richmond Tigers are on their way to their first AFL premiership in God knows how long. Petrol costs about $1.20 a litre, and Denise Walker is writing to the parents of Spire Primary School about the massive amounts of waste that she's seeing come in and the things that she would like to do to help stop it. My name is Ben Taylor, and today I'm going to be talking to you about this very piece, the Section C from the 2017 VCE English Exam. And we're going to be looking at a range of different ways that you can see this piece. From the most basic foundation skills of argument analysis that can really help you get on your way to being able to write pieces and get into a habit of writing really effective pieces, to then some of the general things that we want to do if we want to be writing some good, solid pieces, up until the very end of the video where we're going to look at the really small little things that made the difference between the students that did an okay job or a good job and those students that did a great job on this piece. And so if you are watching this video and you haven't yet taken a look through our original 3 videos about argument analysis, I would strongly recommend that you do that now because they are structured in a similar way. We have the first video, which we've titled The Nuts and Bolts of Argument Analysis. The second one is about writing consistently good pieces. And the third one is taking a look at the 8 habits of the very best argument analysis pieces and how those things come together. And today's video is a follow-on from those because that's the manner in which we're going to move through it. And so we're going to start with the nuts and bolts, the foundation skills that we can use when we're looking at any argument analysis piece. But we want to see it happening here in context. And so the skills that we're looking for with this nuts and bolts sort of foundation sort of approach is to take a look at think, act, and feel. We always want to be coming back to how the language has led the reader and the audience to think or act or feel. It has to be a part of every single one of our paragraphs. It has to be what all of our analysis is based on. And the best way that we can do that, the way that we can prepare ourselves so that we're ready for whatever the exam throws at us, is to focus on the writer and the reader, or to be more precise, the audience whom the writer is writing to, and how that's going to impact on the language that's there. And there's some really fantastic examples with this piece. And so if we start off with how Denise Walker wants to come across, she is the principal of the school. We understand that. But she is more than just a regular old principal. And she starts early on in the piece by saying, "It's true that I often take this school down new paths." And so she's clearly establishing herself as a leader, as someone who is a bit of a maverick, as someone who is, very proactive in the way that they go about things and how they like to go about their lives. So yes, she often takes the school down new paths. She is someone who is proactive and energetic and active in the way in which she's trying to do all these things. She goes further to talk about the fact that they are the only local school. And that word only, really highlights the fact that through her leadership and through all these different paths that they have gone down, she's actually created many things that these parents should be proud of. And so this is where we're going further than just identifying how she seems and how she might want to portray herself to the reader, but why she might want to do that in that way. And so when we have this idea of, the many different paths and we're the only school with the walk or pedal to school day, once a week instead of a month or term, whatever it is, it's this way of saying, you've trusted me before. I have these ideas, but they're good ideas. I have your children's interests at heart and so on. But how are you going to put that down in analysis? We could talk about, the forming of trust, the manner in which Walker provides a energetic education and a sustainable education for these children that the parents have trusted for her to educate, and that she is a dynamic leader and someone whom the reader should trust to make further changes. Okay. She then goes on to talk about, we are responsible for the future of our world. And so the reason that I bring this up is because there's this shift from I to we. And at that very base level, or really, to be quite honest, that poor level, there are those students that look at it and go, we, inclusive language. We includes the reader, and that's why she's done it. And we need to be so much better than that. We need to be doing things in a much more precise manner, even if we're just working at the foundations of these skills with Year 12. So when it says we are responsible for the future of the world, we can talk about not just her, but the fact that she includes the parents as a part of it. And so rather than just saying, oh, they feel included, they're a part of the argument, it's this idea that she creates a sense of collective responsibility, that she is pointing out that the parents are as much of a part of the school community as she is as the principal, and therefore that shared responsibility goes on to them. And so we have this idea of the dynamic that exists between the reader and the writer, and it continues on further here where Walker makes some really deliberate pleas towards the audience, knowing who they are and being very aware of who they are. And that's how we can really, develop these habits. We want to be looking at who is the writer, how do they want to portray themselves, and why would they do that? And then really have a think about who is the audience, and can I find any examples of language that really talk about who the audience is, so I can, therefore analyze that as well. Because whilst we can, never guess or never know what's going to be on that exam at the end of the year, we can always be pretty certain that there's going to be a distinct person that is coming across in a certain way, that writer or speaker or presenter, and there's always going to be that intended audience for the piece. And so if we get in the habit of really looking to nail those skills early, then we can go a really long way with doing the rest of our analysis. And so she points out here that she, walked around the grounds at recess time, and this little aside here, had a chat, with any student who wanted to, and then she just mentions many, I am glad to say. And so we can pick up on that and discuss the fact that really what she's saying to the parents there is that this is a nice place. This is a good school. You have good kids, and this is a good place that they come to here. And so there is this idea of connection as well. And so how do we bring that down to an analysis? We could talk about the fact that Walker brings about a feeling of goodwill, of optimism, a positive story to create these positive connotations around, how the school is seen and how the school operates on a daily basis. Of course, this links back to the fact that she is the leader of this school. She has already mentioned that, she takes the school down many paths, but now she's also reminding the readers of the fact that, well, actually, when I walk around this place, it's a pretty good place to be, not forgetting that she is the leader and that she has a huge part in that. So then we can move to the next page, and we can also, thinking about the fact that she is, not just asking the parents. It even says here, I might even ask our teachers. And so she's being very aware of the fact that she doesn't want to come across as, sort of sermonizing the reader. She doesn't want to come across as like she's telling them what to do, but rather she's furthering this idea of creating a collective sense of responsibility and trying to draw the reader in by saying, I'm doing it, your kids are going to be doing it, I'm even going to ask the teachers, and so all of us as a part of the community should do this. And so she can create that feeling by doing so. She then finishes her letter with, as usual, your comments are welcome. And again, it's just that little thing. And these are the habits that you should be looking out for, as usual. And so we can analyze that, those two words, very simple words. But that idea of saying, Walker concludes her piece by saying, as usual, she refers to the fact that comments are welcome, quote, as usual. It sets the tone here that Walker is someone who is open to ideas. It's someone who is open to comments and open to suggestions and, who really cares, not just about the school and the students that are there, but also their parents and what those parents might have to say. Of course, we are lucky in this piece that we have the reply here from Louise. And so we can talk about how she presents herself as well. And so when we have this second line here with, my partner and I have always supported your green ideas, there's that idea of her portraying herself as being usually supportive. She's not a negative person. She's not a nasty person. She's someone who appreciates Denise and is usually supportive. She's not against a green initiative. She's not against Walker's ideas. Usually when she hears about it, she's more than happy to get on board. And so therefore she presents herself as reasonable, as someone who will later on, we know, will go on to say, but this is too far. But she sets that up by saying, usually I'm on board with this. So she's able to establish a sense of credibility and a sense of her being someone who is open to change, just not this change. And so we can analyse that in a range of different ways as well. The word chaos is used later on, which I think is a really great one that you should jump on. Mornings are chaos. And so she's presenting herself as being someone who lives a hectic life, as someone who is extremely busy, who's someone who is constantly working to ensure that her children are okay. And as a result of that, the mornings are chaos in their house. And so trying to get that sense of empathy as well. And so while we're already talking about the writer here, if we then talk about who the reader is, we can think about the fact that, yes, sure, her direct audience is Denise Walker because she's written something as a reply. But if we look at this piece, we can see that it is a newsletter and that it's online and that the comments are welcome and that the comment is the first one that's there. So Louise has written this in the full knowledge that other parents and people in the school community will be reading it. So don't be afraid to include those people as a part of the analysis, because it's more than just Denise Walker, and you're really closing yourself off if you're saying, Louise is writing for an audience of one. She's writing to other parents as well and providing those relatable experiences as a way to, garner that support. She does this again with the both of us parents go to work. And so again, we have this feeling of, her being empathized with, she's a busy person. She's got a lot going on. And so there's that sense of this being perhaps a bit unfair, exactly how much they're asking of her there. And so this comes to a head when she says, why begrudge us all the odd easy night off? And in doing so, we don't want to be blunt in saying that because it's a reply to Walker that she's attacking her or anything like that, because she's not. Rather, she's just saying to Walker, don't be the person who, victimizes people, who are looking for a bit of a break, who live these chaotic lives and so on. And so to finish up our initial understanding of these sort of nuts and bolts things we can find with the reader and the writer, there's a couple of other things that have been done here that I want you to see in terms of things we could use directly for think, act, feel. And if we're trying to get into that entry level and trying to really improve ourselves when we've, struggled with this task in the past, being able to jump on certain terms and say, right, that would lead a reader to think or act or feel this way can be a really good habit to get into. In fact, it is the best habit to get into because it means that you'll always be leading yourself towards the essence of this task. Of course, you can look to improve yourself further once you've got there, but if we're getting past irrelevant material and we're just getting into that think, act, feel right from the start, then we know we're really on to a winner. And so a couple of things that are happening here that can really show us this in further detail is this idea of the language choice clogging our bins. And so that word clogging, we could use that as a deliberate language choice that we can see straight away because it really brings up this idea of how big a problem this is and that things are clogged and that this needs to be dealt with immediately, that there's a sense of urgency that comes because this problem is getting out of hand and that it is suffocating, it's clogging the bins. So that very deliberate language choice there. Of course, we also have later on this, why not a washable plastic bottle? And so the reason that I bring that up is because many times students will see that rhetorical question and they'll just explain it. And they'll just say things like, if Walker asks, why don't they use a plastic bottle? Saying that that's what people could do in order to solve the problem. And that's just explaining the fact that she's done it. Instead, we could be really looking at the fact here that this is everybody's responsibility and that if we want to get past this clogging of the bins, that there are solutions to it. And so therefore, the clogging leads us to this think, act, feel about urgency and panic and seeing the problem for what it is. And then the why not, use a plastic bottle is that idea of there is a solution and there is a way out of it and that we can take responsibility for it. And so this second phase of the video is going to take a look at the habits that we should all be in when we're looking to write these really good, solid argument analysis pieces. And so there's a few direct strategies that I'm going to talk about today, and plenty of it will be in language that you will have heard from your English teacher, I'm sure, but just as a way to try and impart these habits onto you so that you're always looking for these no matter what piece it is that you're looking at. Because everything that I mentioned today, whilst I'm going to be looking at specific language from the Spire Primary School piece, can be applied to any Section C exam. And so the first thing we're going to think about is tone. And now tone is one of those things where so many students think that they have done the job when they have just identified the tone. So they might say something like, Walker speaks with a highly energetic tone. And then if they don't do anything else after saying that, then there was no point them even saying it in the first place. You are not there just to identify the tone. You are there to analyse how the tone has helped the writer persuade the reader and why they will have used that tone. And so tone can often, not always, but can often go hand in hand with argument. And if, particularly now with the study design having moved to this being argument analysis, you need to be able to show where you understand the introduction of new arguments or the culmination of arguments and where these arguments shift. And so we can take a look for these things as we go throughout this piece. And I'll just mention a few of them to you. Just keep in mind that there's no list of correct arguments or anything like that. It's the way that you read it. And so I'll be pointing out a few things that I noticed, but there are many different arguments and tacts and so on that Denise Walker and Louise take that you could be analysing as well. And so this first thing that we see here is, oh no, I hear you say. She's got another idea. And so this tone of, relatability, and we don't always have to say the tone of, it's this sense of, there are all these ideas. She's got another idea. And so it's this idea that she's trying to get across is that there's often lots happening. So we could talk about it being energetic, that Walker begins in a dynamic, energetic, friendly manner, an affable manner, speaking directly to the parents with a humorous tone around, oh no, I hear you say, a little bit self-defacing in terms of being able to have a laugh at herself and all the different things that she does. I've just mentioned 5 or 6 different tones, but the things that I want to bring up about it is why she would have done it. And so there's this idea of her being able to point out that all of those tones and all of that idea, brings home the idea to the reader that this is an energetic, dynamic school and that they should be proud to be part of it. Of course, it goes on to when she brings up, I have become increasingly concerned. And so there's this point where she has already said, but I think we can do more. And so her tone shifts here from, okay, here I am and I've got this idea, to now being, we're good. We do the walk and pedal to school day. We do this, we do that. We do all these great things, but we can do more. So that we can do more is that shift in argument and that shift in tone. It's saying, let's not get lazy. Let's not rest on our laurels. We're capable of more, that we have high expectations. And so therefore there's this feeling of pride that comes across there as well. And so when we bring that back to think, act, feel, we can talk about how, the reader is led to feel a sense of pride, a sense of responsibility in being a parent at such a great school. We can do more, that they feel that they are a part of these high expectations, and therefore they feel honoured is probably a little bit strong, but that they feel, that sense of pride and that sense of belonging in being a part of such a great school. It then shifts again with the I have become increasingly concerned. So the tone has now shifted from, hey, here I am, I can have a laugh at myself, look at all these great things, we're a bit different, but we can do more, to now saying there's a problem. And so therefore it's this idea of the increasing concern, the idea of the rising worry and concern. And panic, again, is probably a little bit strong, but that idea of, where all these things are going. And so when it talks about eventually our country, that's a real signpost there for that argument of saying that what she is essentially saying to the audience here is that we need to think about what's happening at Spire Primary School, because these problems go on to become problems for our country. And that, when it talks about this, it moves on to the fact that she uses that word irreversible. And so therefore that, she is moving the reader to see that whilst we might be happy with what we've done here at Spire Primary School, this problem is getting way out of hand, and that our actions have an impact on a global scale. And so therefore it is a change in tact, it's a change in approach. And you could talk about that as an argument that Walker uses, is that she leads the reader towards seeing the ultimate impact of their actions, and that their responsibility goes beyond their own lives to, how everybody can live their lives. So then when we talk about, when we're furthermore thinking about tone, a really interesting thing here with the visual, in that I would suggest that this visual has a really strong tone and a sense of feeling and atmosphere about it. That dystopian feeling that comes across through the grey, through the colour, the way in which that's been used, through the details in the foreground, in the background as well as the foreground. This idea that these piles of rubbish go on forever. It enhances her idea of your actions have far-reaching consequences. It really brings that home, and does so in a way where she's pointing out this idea of this irreversible damage. The tone, of course, is quite bleak. We can see that through the colour. We can see that through those grey clouds. We could say that she is bringing up a sense of... we could say that she's bringing up a sense of dread and doom, and this idea of it being this dystopian society. And so therefore there is a link created. And when we're talking about arguments and the way in which Walker aims to do this, there's that link between, hey, all these things that happen at our little school contribute to what happens in our whole world as well. And so that's reiterated there with the visual as well. And so another approach that Walker uses to really enhance this idea is in this section here. And I haven't actually outlined anything specific here, but rather it's that point where she's talking about at our canteen, why not a plastic bottle for the drinking juice and the biscuits and the cheese? And so rather than just pointing out all of these things that she brings up, we could talk about the manner in which she lists them as a way of her pointing out this cumulative effect of all of them and how that relates to the visual. That even at their school, there's all of these examples of rubbish, and that all of these little things grow towards these much bigger problems. And so that's how it comes about. And if we really wanted a quote to sum that up really well, this idea of more rubbish down here, down the bottom. And of course, the other thing that Walker is doing here is that she is saying that that it's time for us to take responsibility as a school. She's talking to the audience being the parents as well. And so she's very deliberate in the use of this term, your children. So before all of these things are mentioned and this listing that relates to the visual that's there's also this idea of saying to the readers, and it's your kids that are the ones doing it. So therefore, we are the ones that have power as to how it all can come to a head and how it can all be solved. And so it moves on with her argument here. And we have this point where she is saying the difference between the word asking and then insisting. And so it's just a subtle reiteration of the fact that she does have a sense of power. And so when we're talking about argument and tone and how these things can shift and all these types of things, there's this way of saying that at the beginning of the piece, Walker is quite, self-effacing. She says, oh no, not another idea I hear you say. She has that self-awareness to, have a laugh at herself and so on. But later on, she actually uses the word insisting when talking about her canteen. And so, when we talk about that, we could, I'd be saying that, well, she's really flexing her muscles a little bit there. Now, I wouldn't write that in an analysis, but that's just there to make the point. So rather, I'd be saying that Walker shifts from early on being quite relatable and pointing out that she can laugh at herself to later on be quite strong in asserting her power by showing that she can insist that the canteen make these changes. And so there's plenty of analysis that can go along with that. I do want to make a point at the moment that I am working through this piece chronologically. It's just a really easy way for me to be able to move through all of the arguments. I don't think that you should be working chronologically through your piece and writing it out there. In fact, sometimes that can lead to really stale analysis. The way in which you're going to put this all together in your analysis piece should be borrowing evidence from all of these points and taking them in a way where you show those shifts in arguments. There's no requirement. In fact, I'd almost make the argument that you really shouldn't move through it chronologically. Rather, it's easier in a video like this to be able to take you through step by step, and then as you walk away from this, I'd be encouraging you to be able to to group your evidence and talk about it in ways that the arguments and the tones shift across each other and how that happens. So when we see here in this next paragraph, how many nights a week do you eat takeaway? Again, the very basic and plain analysis of that could be that she questions the reader, and we know that. But we want to think about why and what that really does to them. And so we could say that it's blunt, but what else is it? It's confronting the reader. So we can maybe bring in some of these verbs. It's really confronting them, and it's leading them to reflect on their habits, on their behaviours. The fact that she's done it after pointing out all of those waste products and that cumulative effect is telling as well, because it has again gone from the global problem and now bringing it down to the personal habits and really getting those people to reflect on, what impact that would have. Of course, she then exacerbates this point by talking about the mounds of waste products. And so we can link that quote to the visual, of course, because they are literally mounds of waste products. But again, it takes the individual experience about takeaway containers and plastic and these types of things, and then links it to the overall problem, which is mounds of waste products. And finally, before Walker ends her piece, she talks about, this will be a challenge at school and at home, but we must confront it. And so again, very strong language use there, and that idea of we must confront it really brings up this idea that it is a duty, that it is a responsibility, it is a must. And so what I'm really hoping that you're picking up on by the way that we've gone through all of these arguments paragraph by paragraph is that there is that shift in language and that there is that flow in argument and the way in which it changes, and that sometimes it's soft and lighthearted, sometimes it's actually really quite direct and blunt. How many nights a week do you eat takeaway? This is something we must confront and that we must do. And so a really interesting way of seeing that. And then we obviously move to Louise. And so this idea of fair go, Denise. Of course, she's speaking directly to Denise there, but it's that way of pointing out like, come on, Denise, I think you're going too far here, that really this is all a bit much. And of course, that comes too later on when she says, have you any idea? And so whilst that is moving towards this idea of, do you really understand us? It's also perhaps pointing out that Louise is trying to undermine Denise Walker's comments a little bit in saying, have you any idea? Which is really saying, you've got no basis in reality here. You don't understand this. You don't fully understand this issue. And that what you're asking is beyond the pale, fair go, Denise, as she pointed out there. As it goes on, she talks about the disconnect with the why begrudge us. And so it's interesting to be able to use this, with the why begrudge us, the odd easy night off, because it's that difference in tact where Walker has tried to be very communal. Louise here is actually creating a bit of a disconnect in saying you're being a little bit autocratic here. You're being, you're really telling us what to do and why you're trying to make us feel guilty. We've got these busy lives and so on. And so there's that shift there. And as I mentioned before, I don't want you to be blunt in saying, oh, she attacks Walker, because she doesn't really, but she undermines her argument. She, wants people to pause for reflection, and she wants to be able to be relatable to the other parents. But I wouldn't say that she attacks Walker, rather that she perhaps portrays Walker as being out of touch with reality, particularly when it comes to this one, and for shooting for far too much. And so there's also that sense of guilt that comes across as well. A great shame if for a vague principle we wouldn't be able to do this. So that idea that, look, it's a vague principle. So again, with that direct language choice there of vague, this idea that, look, I don't think this is as important as what you're saying, this whole thing. We do a lot of things for the environment. We can't do everything. Our lives would be, completely different. And so what we're really looking to get towards here with these habits that we talk about with consistently good analysis pieces is finding those little parts of language that are really indicative of the bigger arguments that are going on. And we've talked about many of them here, but some other ones are this idea of it being a lifesaver. The fact that she points out, about joining the hard rubbish. I don't want you to be, bland in saying, oh, well, she's mocking Denise Walker. Well, she might be a little bit, but also she's pointing out how ridiculous her arguments are and that how difficult it is in order to be completely green, that by doing one thing, you're doing something that's bad for the environment there. And so all of these little arguments and these little things, what I want you to be able to see with everything that's been highlighted there for you is the way in which the argument moves, the way in which the tones shift, and the way in which the approach changes, and the language that really shows off how that works. Of course, with that, when we're looking to write these consistently good analysis pieces, we're looking to really go further with that writer and reader relationship. So instead of just talking about the writer seems this way, this would affect the audience, we're talking about what specifically has been done in order to impact on that audience directly. And we're talking about how the writer is aiming to portray themselves and always making sure that we bring that back to how they want to be seen as a case of how that's going to help them, have an impact on the reader and how that's going to lead them to think or act or feel. And so we move now to the habits of the very best scoring pieces. And we've covered an awful lot already when we've looked through this piece a couple of times. But now we're going to look at the little things that make all the difference between the good pieces and the solid, well-written pieces and the really good, the great pieces, those pieces that are right there up the top. And so there's a few habits that I want to talk to you about here, and I'll show you exactly how we could see them with this piece. And the first of those is finding a purpose instead of just a contention. And so as we look at it here, obviously we can see the contention that most people will see when they look at this piece. Denise Walker wants parents to consider other options for their children's lunchboxes and to cut down on waste. Louise thinks that she's going too far, and that's the clear contention. But what about the purpose? What are they looking to do to the reader? What is it that you can say in your analysis of this piece that shows that you understand it at a deeper level than someone who just says, oh, this is what they want? Rather, what do they do? And so when we take a look at it here, we can see this idea of for us all to think about. And so really what Denise Walker is doing is that she's aiming to rally people around her, that she is aiming to inspire and to motivate people to join her in this quest for this cleaner world, this less clogged world that she really aims for. And as she has pointed out here at the bottom, but I think we at Spire can do more. It's about her, literally trying to inspire people to, go further with their efforts and try to say to people that they should hold high expectations of themselves, and that as they are, leaders at this school, as it says here with this visual up the top, lead and inspire, and this idea of this new growth coming out of this very flexible tree and the manner in which, we can do these things and be leaders. She is trying to say to the parents that we're a special school, we do things a bit different, we're leaders, and you should come with me and help me do this, and that you should be seeing yourself as someone who is important and someone who can make a change. And so when we start to think that way, we can find evidence along those lines that can really help us understand that she's looking to gather the community, that she's looking to, include herself and enact positive change. Of course, this idea of it being, our canteen and so on is this idea that we're all in this and we can all make this change. And so when we think of it in that way, it's much more than what she is saying, but also what she really is doing to the reader. Of course, we can analyse this when it comes to Louise as well. As opposed to what she is just saying, we can talk about what she is doing to the reader. When she does things like talking about, her kids walking to school every day and they really are interested in which rubbish goes where. There's that idea that she is really outlining that her kids already do fall in line behind these things. She is pushing to the reader that this is a great school and that she wants people to see her in that way, but she then wants people to consider the practicality of it all. And so this idea of her talking about it being a vague principle or about begrudging us the odd easy night off, and also pointing out the soy sauce and what a mess little kids will make of that, it's pointing out that perhaps this idea isn't practical. And so she is moving people towards seeing it as impractical or as a step too far. And so that way, when we're looking at that, we're talking about the fact that she is looking to move readers towards that. It's that purpose of what she is doing to them, and also perhaps being a voice of the parents, that she is allowing other parents to join her in this protest against, it's a slight protest against Walker, as opposed to just what she is saying. So more than just it's ridiculous, she's moving readers, to join her and join her voice in saying, we fall in line with a lot of your ideas, Denise, but this one's just a step too far. And so another habit of these really top scoring pieces is their ability to group evidence. And I mentioned earlier in the video that we worked chronologically through the arguments just as a way of showing the flow and how it moves through. But the very top pieces aren't the ones that say firstly, secondly, thirdly, and then Walker does this, and then, and then, and then. They're the ones that bring about their understanding, their holistic understanding of argument by bringing evidence from the start of the piece and then the end of the piece and bringing it together in the same analysis. And so I want to run you through a couple of things that you could use to analyze that would show that overall holistic understanding of argument and how it comes about. And the first of these is this idea of Walker pointing out that she has yet another idea. And so as we can see, it's just here on this first page, but this idea of she's got another idea. If we take a look at the top image, we have this idea of this new growth coming off of this tree. And so we have the idea, this point coming across that another idea, it's like these green shoots, that this is a school where things are happening all the time, where there's this dynamic lead towards new paths. And that's another quote that's used there as well. And that to lead and inspire means growth, and that Walker is leading that as a principal towards these new ideas and this growth that she is looking for. Another couple of things that we could have found there are this idea of a common flask, and then later on she talks about a communal teapot. So there's this way of her reiterating the point that the solution to this point is through community, is through collective action, is through collective responsibility. And we could be really sharp in showing our understanding of that by grouping together that idea of the common flask and the communal teapot, just as a way of pointing out these two uses of language that are reiterating this same idea that it's going to take everybody to solve this problem, and therefore I need you all on board. So, of course, the main visual as well, as we see here, when I've already talked about the mounds of rubbish and all these things piling in on top of each other, and we could link that and group that with those multiplying pods. And so with the multiplying pods, we can link that together with the mounds of rubbish, and it really reiterates this point that this is a problem that is out of control, and that it's cumulative, and that it's getting worse, and that it's continuing on. And so that's a really, really interesting way of being able to link the visual to the written word in a way to be able to really show that holistic understanding of argument. So we've already talked about purpose, and one way that we can really show our understanding of what the writer is doing is to use doing words. And so I want you to think about some of the verbs that would apply when it comes to what Walker and then what Louise are looking to do to the reader. And so really making it clear in this point about how Walker is challenging people. She really is. She's challenging them. She's confronting them about their own behaviour. She's pushing them to reflect on their behaviour. She is asking for a sense of contemplation about their own impact on the rest of the world. So, you could say that leading to contemplation, leading them to consider their impact. She asks them to reflect. She pushes them. She challenges them. She confronts them. And so all of these words are going to work so much better than just saying, she says, she argues, then she says, she argues. Using those verbs to talk about the ways in which he's approached it. Of course, Louise does it as well, and we have those examples where, Louise is really looking to question Walker's understanding of the practicalities of the real world. She questions those things. She moves readers to question them as well. And she also, moves throughout her piece in a manner that, outlines those basic things as a way of really, pushing how chaotic life can be, and therefore moving people to feel, that sense of togetherness, that sense of community with her, by her bringing out those very relatable experiences and the chaos that might be, happening in the morning of all the families that go to Spire Primary School. And so another strategy that we've talked about is the from here to there technique, or the A to B, getting the reader to a certain point, so the writer can then do something else to them. And so something that a couple of examples of where this happens here in this piece is the manner in which Walker really creates that sense of pride. And I have talked about this a little bit, but in these early points, she talks about it being a truly organic vegetable garden. And the pet hens scratch and roam as they wish. And so there's this idea of the pride of how special this place is. And so we can analyze that in the fact that she gets people to this point of feeling this sense of pride so that she can then impart a sense of responsibility that goes with that. As if there is a point that to be a part of this school is a privilege and something to be proud of and something to be happy about. But with that comes this responsibility. And therefore she is able to get them to feel that, well, if we want this school to continue to be this fantastic place that it is, we need to listen to another one of her ideas. Of course, that also works to point out the fact, and we could mention her, oh no, not another one of her ideas. She then follows on that comment, so she gets them thinking, oh, another one of her ideas, but she follows that immediately with all the examples of the great things that the school does. So it's a subtle way of pointing out to the audience that, yes, I have a lot of ideas, but a lot of them have been good ones, and that's what makes our school special. Louise does this as well. And so this idea of Louise beginning with, she outlines the support that her and her husband have for the green initiatives. And so by moving Walker and by moving the reader to see that, she has this support of these green ideas, she's then much more reasonable when she actually brings out the fact that, but this is one too far. That I'm happy to do A, B, and C, but D is too far. I can't go along with this idea. So therefore, she builds that sense of her being a part of it and usually on board. So therefore, it is seen as more effective. I shouldn't say more effective, but rather it's seen as more emphatic when later on she mentions, but I won't do this. And so it's that way of getting the reader in that sense of feeling towards, I will do most of these things, but I won't do that. So it really shows the power of how far she feels that Walker has gone this time. And so that's just a few things that we noticed, moving from those nuts and bolts sort of things that we definitely want to be covering, writer and audience and those types of things, and then a few strategies that we can look at to really help us build our abilities in argument analysis. If you've enjoyed the video and got something out of it, we'd really appreciate for you to click on the bell and to subscribe to our channel, and also to like the video. You are more than welcome to ask questions, and we'd really like to respond to your questions, so put them down there in the comments. Let us know what else we can do to help you with your VCE journey. We are here to help you out. Take a look through our channel and see if we have covered your texts. Chances are we have. And see the other videos on argument analysis that might just help you get those last few marks that you need to really get to where you want to be. Until we see you next time, all the best with your studies and good luck.